Well, good afternoon to everybody on this frigid day in Washington. My name's Larry Schwartz. I'm hosting this program for the Public Diplomacy Council of America and our partners at USC and George Washington University. We're here at GW this afternoon to talk about some really great possibilities in the activities of public diplomacy overseas, which is good because we are basically a nonpartisan professional association. We spent far too much time looking at our own wonderful, distinguished careers and thinking about how great we were. Uh, that's what service officers do when we retire. We have boring stories for our children and grandchildren. But we really need to also think back about the things that we did that were most meaningful and how we can help the next generation of foreign service officers and Americans experience foreign policy and put America's best foot forward for the world. So, uh, anyway, again, my name's Larry Schwartz. I spent 32 years with USIA and then state, mostly in the Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs and South Asian Affairs. And I had a great career. I loved it. Uh, but I especially loved my time overseas. And for me, doing press work, I thought was the most important work. I was concerned about foreign policy. That's why I joined uh, in the beginning, and I spent quite a few years of my career doing press related work. But as I got to be more senior, one of the things I saw in my experiences in countries around the world was that you could do an awful lot with our exchanges and grants program, and you could do almost as much and maybe more to change people's attitudes about the United States through these other activities rather than simply by telling them what our foreign policy is and trying to explain it. So I saw the immense popularity of these exchanges. And having once been an academic almost, I also came to appreciate the people who spent years and years of their careers looking at the countries that we were serving in. Now, we got signed for 3 years, maybe at a country, and we'd come and then we'd go. But there are people I was meeting when I was overseas in India and Pakistan and Egypt that had spent 20 and more years just doing work in those countries. Now, it seems to me that these people are amazing Americans who know an awful lot. And in fact, we've all known for a long time that as brilliant and charming as we are as diplomats, the American people are our strongest allies in advancing U.S. foreign policy. So recently, uh, I saw uh, that, you know, the Department of Education was under pressure from the administration and wanting to make the administration wanted to make changes in the way its programs were operating. And in November, there was an agreement between the Education Department and state to transfer a number of programs from the Education Department to the State Department. Now, these are not new programs in some respect, and Heidi will tell us a little bit more about it in just a minute. But the point being, these are new programs that are now fully under the administration of the State Department, which, in my view, is a huge opportunity for the State Department and public diplomacy generally. If we can think creatively about how to work with these academics, I think we can do very good work on telling America's story in the future. And so as today, I thought it'd be useful to bring together this panel of distinguished professionals who have worked with the American Overseas Research Centers. And we'll start, we'll start first by introducing them. So I have Heidi Weissink here, who's um, I guess the executive director of the American CAORC, the Council of American Overseas Research Centers, right? And basically manages the program for all the individual research centers, of which there are 32.
Well, it's 26 as of last month, but there are 4 countries.
It's all going to be complicated, but that's the fun part, okay? And I mean, I think that we need to look at all of these overseas research centers that we're now going to be working with. Mary Jeffers, a former FSO, is the board president for Talim, the Tangier American legation in Morocco, which is also the North African Studies, right? Work.
The North African group.
Part of the North African.
Yeah, we'll talk about
it. Okay, so Mary will talk about that. And after that, Ambassador Skip Ganim, a former dean here at George Washington University, a distinguished ambassador for Jordan, Australia, and Kuwait, Director General of the Foreign Service, a very senior American diplomat who worked in Jordan and is now the chairman of the board for the Jordan Center, which we call ACOR. Because you see, these guys made it complicated to acquire them because they all have different names. But never mind, they're American Overseas Research Centers. And I'm going to ask Heidi to start by telling us about what CAORC is and what these overseas research centers have been doing for years under the sponsorship of the Education Department and the State Department, right?
Yes.
Take this.
Actually, I have.
Oh, you have that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. I want to first thank Larry for putting this together, and Ambassador Ganem and Mary Jeffers for speaking today. I'd also like to thank the Elliott School for their generous hospitality and hosting us. I'll start us off by covering the history of CAORC and explain a little about how and why it was founded. So the Council of American Overseas Research Centers, or as we say, CAORC, is a network of American research centers located overseas that are dedicated to assisting Americans conducting research on critical issues of U.S. national importance. CAORC is the umbrella organization, a private nonprofit organization located here in Washington, D.C. We have office space in the Natural History Museum at the Smithsonian Institution. The 26 overseas research centers, which we also sometimes refer to as ORCs, like from Lord of the Rings, but they're good, they're not bad. They're located throughout Asia, the Middle East, North and West Africa, Europe, South Caucasus, and Latin America. Each overseas research center is also an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization registered here in the U.S., each governed by their own board of directors. The center's board members are made up mainly of representatives of U.S. colleges, universities, and museums. CAORC works together with the ORCs as a network, providing services to U.S. researchers and facilitating research projects across national boundaries to deepen U.S. expertise critical to national security and economic stability. The ORCs maintain a permanent presence in regions of the world where understanding local histories, cultures, and economies is vital to informed policymaking and global leadership. The ORCs were each created in response to the needs of U.S. scholars interested in conducting research in specific host countries, where navigating the research landscape and securing research permits can be challenging or even impossible for individual researchers. Several of the centers are over a century old, the oldest being the American School of Classical Studies at Athens, which was founded in 1881. Several were founded after World War II when the U.S. expanded its diplomatic and scholarly reach throughout the world. 8 of the ORCs were established after the year 2000, including in countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, Indonesia, Burma, South Caucasus, and the Balkans. The ORCs range in size from very large and well-funded, like the centers in Rome and Athens, to much smaller centers with modest budgets, like in Algeria, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and a few others. Before CAORC was founded in 1981, the growing complexity of international research was increasing the need for services of the centers. However, at that time, they were each operating alone with no connection to each other. Some were quite small and suffering from a lack of resources, which was beginning to threaten their work. In 1978, the Smithsonian Institution and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences convened a meeting to discuss the joint concerns of the centers, resulting in a publication entitled Corners of a Foreign Field, edited by Robert McAdams, who later became Secretary of the Smithsonian. The report recommended that a planning committee begin work on the design of a cooperative organization to connect the centers. As the academic community was considering ways for the centers to collaborate, Alice Ilchman, a former Assistant Secretary of State for Educational and Cultural Affairs, and at that time president of Sarah Lawrence College, wrote a report on the prospects for long-term funding to support and strengthen the centers. In the fall of 1981, after Alice Ilchman's report was submitted to the Smithsonian Secretary S. Dillon Ripley, CAORC was established with the purpose of serving as an umbrella organization, connecting the centers as a network, and increasing the visibility and funding resources.
Yeah. I'd like to ask, is there anybody in this room that worked with an overseas research center in their overseas tours? Jess Ware in Turkey, yeah.
A little bit Senegal one was getting.
Senegal, Michael, American Institute for Indian Studies. Bill?
Pakistan,
Institute for Pakistan Studies, Israel.
Cairo, Agra.
Cairo especially is a huge program.
What's up the park?
Yeah.
When is that?
That started about 98.
1980?
98. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
With the APHIS in Indonesia.
APHIS in Indonesia. Okay, so just to be clear, before you continue, I just wanted to point out that these are mostly retired Foreign Service officers now, have already had overseas direct experience with many of these centers.
Over time, CAORC has greatly broadened its programs and support for the centers. In 1991, CAORC Director Mary Ellen Lane testified before Congress when reauthorization of the Higher Education Act was under consideration, calling for the Department of Education funding for the centers. The following year, in 1992, Congress enacted Section 610 of the Higher Education Act, and the Department of Education began funding administrative and programmatic activities for the centers through the Title VI program. It was part of the IFL, the International Foreign Language Education section at Department of Ed. This Title VI funding through the Department of Education has been critical for the operations of the centers for over 3 decades. In 1993, CAORC began receiving funding annually from USIA, the U.S. Information Agency, to support programs at the centers. After USIA was disbanded in 1999, this annual funding for CAORC and the centers has continued from the State Department Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, for which we are very grateful. The center's permanent embedded American presence on the ground overseas supports a wide range of both U.S. government and non-governmental programs, such as Fulbright Program, critical language scholarships, cultural heritage programs, and others. The centers work with U.S. embassies and serve scholars and researchers from over 600 U.S. universities, colleges, and museums. Because CAORC and the centers are private nonprofit organizations with experienced permanent staff on the ground overseas, we are able to implement programs quickly and efficiently without bureaucracy and delays. The State Department and embassies have come to rely upon CAORC and the centers to implement their programs. One example I'll mention came about in 2006 when the State Department asked CAORC to design and implement language programs at the centers through a newly established National Security Language Initiative. I remember it clearly. It was late January 2006 when the State Department first mentioned the idea of this new language program to us. And they wanted students to be on the ground in classrooms in multiple countries by June. We had only 4 months to create the program in 10 different locations for 7 different languages at multiple levels, design the curricula, conduct the competition, select the students, hire teachers, organize classrooms, arrange travel, etc. But because we had centers on the ground with permanent staff who had experience administering exchange programs, who had connections locally, we were able to do it. This language program is now called the Critical Language Scholarships, which CAORC continued to implement through 2012. With its broad geographic purview, CAORC is the only organization of its kind playing a unique role in coordinating access to research resources for American scholars at ORCs in locations where infrastructure is often limited. By equipping American scholars with the tools to engage with other societies, CAORC is working to strengthen national security through cultural intelligence and diplomacy and help to build U.S. economic prosperity by facilitating knowledge exchange and expanding global partnerships. In several instances, the ORCs have continued to operate in countries even when the U.S. embassies have suspended operations or completely closed due to political unrest. For example, during Arab Spring, our centers throughout the Middle East and North Africa remained open, and our fellows were allowed to continue their research, including in places like Egypt and Tunisia, even when the Fulbright program and other programs were suspended because of security concerns. Our programs often operate sort of under the radar and can therefore continue operating in country through difficult periods. In fact, our center in Yemen continues to operate today with staff on the ground, even though the U.S. Embassy closed in 2015. We did have to evacuate our local staff from Tehran in 1979 and in Kabul in 2021, but those ORCs still exist and they do programs, just not in country. CAORC conducts programs funded by other federal and private sources as well, but the Department of Education and State Department funding have been the primary sources of funding for over 30 years. With that being said, recent developments at the Department of Education last year are bringing changes. The Title VI programs for the centers are being transferred from the Department of Education to the State Department. As Larry mentioned, this consolidation represents new opportunities in public diplomacy to further U.S. interests through a closer partnership between State Department and American scholars and specialists through the overseas research centers. So thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. That was great. Now we're going to hear from our other panelists who represent specific overseas research centers. But I just want to make the point that, underscore some points that Heidi made. Because these are not federal agencies, they're independent, they don't have to go through so many of the bureaucratic concerns and security concerns that are imposed on foreign service people. Our Fulbright program and other programs are often forced to make big changes as a result of the current political situation. CAORC's institutions have operate very low level, below the radar, as Heidi said, and as a result are able to continue. I managed to work with them in Pakistan with the American Institute of Pakistan Studies, when really nobody was allowed to come to Pakistan during the height of the Afghanistan war. So I'm sure this was true in other places as well. In the Middle East Bureau, one of our most venerable institutions is in Tangier. And we're really lucky today to have Mary Jeffers here to talk. She's the president of the board, the chairman of the board for the Talim, the Tangier's, what is it, American legation, because it's a venerable institution for Moroccan studies. Note also that a lot of these centers have really significant venues overseas as well, bringing back for many of us memories of the old American centers that when we started our careers. Mary, go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you, Larry. Is this? No. Okay. Thank you. It's great to be here today. As a PDCA member, an old PDAA member, and a colleague of several of you over the years, it's wonderful to see familiar faces and new faces. I am exactly 1 month into being the board president. And I'm also really retired at this point in some ways. So I'm a little nervous. So if I sound nervous, just, in another month or two, I'll be used to this again, right? Larry, I could only wish that I worked in an American center that was as beautiful and fancy and historic and every other thing as the legation. The legation is an old building in the old city of Tangier, and its focus is on scholarship, history, friendship, and some more recent expansion of cultural programs and cultural outreach. Just a really quick précis of the history. In 1777, Morocco was the first country in the world to recognize the independent United States. And so just as this year is the 250th anniversary of the United States, next year is the 250th anniversary of that recognition. So we will be paying attention. In 1786, the US and Morocco signed a treaty of peace and friendship that is still in effect. It is the longest treaty that the US has maintained with any country overseas. In 1821, the Sultan gave the legation, a building, the legation in the old city to the US for offices and to live in. Subsequent consul generals and probably the US government a little bit, but mostly consul generals expanded it. And so it's quite a bit bigger than the original building. Moroccan independence in the 1950s caused the State Department to kind of think about what else to do with the building. And finally, in 1976, they were getting ready to say, well, we don't need it. And a group of volunteers, scholars, and some former ambassadors got together to create a nonprofit to save it by opening it as a museum, but also as a research center. And today it is all of those things, a museum, a research center, and a cultural center. And well, they close schools today in Tangier because of rain. It is an unbelievable rainy season and every building in Tangier is feeling it, but yes. The museum, I'll go very quickly. It's something we've expanded in recent years with the help of a consultancy from the Smithsonian. This is the newest permanent exhibition, very colorful. The picture in the upper right is literally a closet behind, cabinet walls that was used as a listening post by the OSS in World War II, getting ready for Operation Torch, which was the invasion of North Africa about 2 years before the Normandy landing. And it was a storage closet for decades after that, but now it is recreated and it's a very popular exhibition. We get about 40,000 visitors a year, which is great because they buy tickets. And so that does help us a lot. We are a private nonprofit. Moving into the AIMS research focus, I'm going to talk about two components. There's the library component of the AIMS Research Center. And then there is the sort of more programmatic focus. Okay. Yes. So I'm just going to talk about that really quickly. I will say that there is a Fulbright Commission in Morocco, in Rabat. So we are not taking care of all of the scholars, or we're not sort of backstopping all of the scholars. But a lot of the scholars go to the north of Morocco, but also our research library is a great resource for all of the Fulbright and AIMS and other scholars. So this is the role of Talim as an overseas research center, or ORC, under the CAORC umbrella. But yes, as you were saying, Larry, it's a little more complicated because Talim belongs to a North African regional group of ORCs called AIMS, American Institute for Maghreb Studies. And does AIMS count as an ORC?
Yes.
Also.
One regional org.
So we're not really an ORC. An ORClet. Okay, we're an ORClet. I'll change my notes. So AIMS doesn't just provide support to individual constituent offices, but it operates actively as a scholarly institute with its own projects. It publishes the Journal of North African Studies. It awards book prizes. It organizes annual conferences and so forth and so on. My focus as we go through the rest of the slides will be on the AIMS program and our role within it. And also how AIMS and its educational and scholarly focus influences some of the other educational and cultural programs at the legation. So first, a very brief history of Ames. It was founded in 1984 to foster academic study of North Africa, originating from a Maghreb studies group founded by American scholars in the 1980s, sort of informally. So Talim has functioned as an Ames partner in Tangier right from the beginning of Ames. CMAT in Tunisia, and it's a French acronym, CMAT, I'm not going to spell it, say it out. It was established in 1987 following a cooperative accord with the Tunisian government. And in 2004, CEMA in Algeria was formed to strengthen ties between American and Algerian researchers. So there has been a kind of a quasi-ORC in Libya at some point, I think, and I don't know.
Yeah, they were.
Okay, but not, yeah. But so it's basically those three. It's Talim, CMAT, and CEMA. So going back to the library, we do have over 10,000 sources, books, magazines, newspapers, photos, and some other interesting things. We have incredible models of historic battles between the Moroccans and West African armies that Malcolm Forbes had created and donated to, and they're historically accurate. So that's yet another resource. The library welcomes researchers from a wide variety of universities and institutions, independent scholars. So it isn't just Ames and Fulbright. Unfortunately, our research library is currently located offsite due to serious damage to the library wing of the legation in 2022 when an adjoining structure essentially collapsed, and we had to evacuate the library out. But there's not enough time to talk about the project of trying to bring it back, but it's a big one. But even offsite, the library continues to draw a wide variety of researchers. So going over to more of the program side. Over the years, Talim has welcomed Ames scholars who are working just in Morocco, who are in Morocco as part of a Morocco, Tunisia, Algiers joint program of some type, and as also people who come as part of Ames conferences. Ames organizes those once a year somewhere in the North Africa region. Because of political hurdles, shall we say, that discourage Moroccans and Algerians from traveling between those two countries, many of the recent regional conferences are organized in Tunisia by CMAT. But in 2022, Talim hosted a very enriching Ames conference for scholars from across the region, as well as from the US. And I think we're doing another one in this year. And I'll give a couple more details about that. In recent years, Ames also had a terrific grant from Mellon to further the arts in North Africa. And again, CMAT took the lead because it involved a lot of, regional travel and so forth. But at Talim, we also had a part of that which enabled us to support 6 scholars through their multidisciplinary PhD studies in cinema and film. So that was kind of interesting and unusual. As mentioned, Talim did host the annual Ames conference in 2022. It was titled An Aqueous Bridge, People and Objects in Motion in the Western Mediterranean from the Medieval to the Modern Era. So that's a pretty broad scope. And the papers did cover that scope, but they were just fascinating. They really offered very specific and compelling research on topics from landscape and identity in medieval Morocco to modern art and architecture in Morocco in the aftershock of the 1960 Agadir earthquake. And there's every other thing too. You can also see on the slide a poster up there for a concert. That was a really well-received musical event for the public held at the legation this past December, and it was organized by one of our Ames scholars, a previous Ames scholar who's now a Fulbright scholar, named Lydia Barrett. And she, in addition to being an ethnomusicologist, she's a vocalist, and she she organized a number of other Moroccan musicians to join her, and they did a whole concert of songs from the US, from Morocco, and elsewhere, traditional classical and folk songs, and people loved it. So this is just a way of talking about how this academic programs are really integrated into everything else we do. This is just some of the topics. When people go to use the offsite library, they sign in and say what they're researching so they can get some assistance from the staff. And so these are just some of the topics. And it just gives you, it's hard to read, but I'll list just a few of them. The Ames-funded researchers themselves were looking at Tangier's history during World War II, as well as the history of phosphate mining in Morocco, especially development of company towns, which is interesting. And also songs of women's contemporary migration across the Sahara, which is the research of this Lydia Barrett who organized the concert. One US Fulbright student researcher is studying the social and economic history of silk brocades, traditionally woven in Fez. Several European researchers were looking for information about their own country's early diplomatic work in the early 20th century in Tangier. The Moroccan scholars tended to pursue research in literature, two of them on Moroccan literature, one on Claude McKay and other Black American writers in Paris and in Tangier. And I was really happy to see a student from Morocco's National School of Architecture visit our library to research the architecture of the legation. So that's great. Last but not least, one American man, a retired security risk consultant, was pursuing research on the OSS in Tangier in and after World War II for an upcoming novel. So, Tom Clancy, look out. This kind of gives you the two halves, in a sense, of our work as an Ames Research Center. And I do think that the research library is a really important part of that because, again, because we are not the only place that is there to support scholars and do programs for them, but it's a good combination. But as I say, the academic and research focus of the whole organization, our whole organization, spills over into the other things that we do. For example, since 1999, we've had a literacy program for our neighbors in the old city, many of whom are not wealthy. And many of the women are, over the years, have not been literate. They have not had a chance to learn to read and write. So 100 or more every year have participated in the literacy program, which in recent years has grown to include cooking classes and sewing classes for small businesses, and more recently, accounting classes, and ways for these women to really kind of, you know, help their families and send their kids to school. We have a wide variety of speaker programs. Sometimes it's a target of opportunity. We know that word. Layla Lalame was going to be in Morocco anyway, and somebody got her to come give a talk. People who are translating books from Arabic into English, somebody came and gave a talk about that process. You see these kind of grayish announcements with the red. This is part of an ongoing series called tertulias, which is a Spanish word meaning essentially salon speaker programs. And this is a long series of people talking about the history of Tangier, the culture of Tangier. They speak in English, French, and Spanish, which is, you know, part of Tangier being a former international zone loosely under Spanish control. And that's really popular. Concerts, why is that part of the academic scholarly? We do concerts as well as enrichment programs for young people in conjunction with the Tangier American Language Center. And this is a private language center that teaches English, and it's one of a network around the country, which used to be part of the USIA up until the 1970s. But then we spun them off back then to be private. And they began making boatloads of money. So when I was there as the PAO in 2008, 2009, 10, we actually set up a little seed fund grant program to try to incentivize them to get into the cultural programming business. And that was when we realized how much money they had, but they were so busy teaching English that they didn't. And so since then, they were able to kind of hire, together they form a kind of a Moroccan nonprofit. They were able to hire somebody to help. And so this Joel Holmes is apparently a pretty well-known American jazz pianist who they brought out all the way from the US to tour the ALCs, and he performed at the legation. And the others are local Moroccan performers. But this is a way to get the high school and university age students to come in, hang out, maybe turn into future scholars. For the younger kids, we've got all kinds of arts enrichment for elementary school, middle school, high school, chess and decision-making seminar, T-shirt printing. There's all kinds of things. And these young people are very, very happy to do this. So even though we're not explicitly doing things like concerts and arts enrichment as part of a scholarly academic program connected with aims, it is really part of our sense of wanting to encourage people to discover, to learn, to think, to consider new, careers or new ways of kind of approaching their lives that involve learning and knowledge. And so this is what we do. And that's my presentation.
Mary?
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. I saw one of the, I was a guest once at Talim, and more than once maybe. And two things that Mary did reminded me. One is the proximity of Tangier to Spain, Gibraltar. Literally, you can see Spain from the balcony of Talim. And how Tangier is a great place for conferences and discussions to talk about the dialogue between Islam and Western cultures. And secondly, the story of the Moroccan medjool dates, which I'm sure many of you love. And you probably know that medjool dates are a source of income and a very important product, agricultural product in Morocco. And in the days before World War II, some Americans came there and spliced some of these trees and brought them over and planted medjool trees in California. And we developed quite a large production of medjool dates in California. But in the 60s, I think it was the 60s, a huge disease wiped out all the medjool dates in Morocco. All. So the Moroccans came to California and took samples of their own trees, brought them back to Morocco, and now, once again, Morocco is an exporter of medjool dates. Anyway, sorry, that's the chairman's authority, I guess.
Learned that story for the first time this morning on a Zoom call with Morocco. So
Oh, really? Okay.
Anyway.
I think I learned that in Tangier. Anyway, so Skip Ghanim, our three-time ambassador, former DG, and closer, is going to speak about. He's the chairman of the board for the ORC in Jordan. So thank you, Skip.
And thank you, Larry, and Heidi Larry for organizing, and Heidi for participating in the program this morning, because I first learned about the existence of ACOR, the American Center of Research in Amman, when I was first a deputy in Amman back in the early days, and then later when I was ambassador. And it was obvious to me as a professional foreign service person in the embassy how valuable ANIRA was to the U.S.-Jordanian relationship. And I can attest to you that the last few years and the difficulties in the neighborhood have just underscored the importance of an organization like ACOR and the other orgs that can continue in its non-political way to support a very important relationship for the United States. So the American Center in Amman was founded in 1968, so we've been around for a while. Originally, it was founded by a group of academicians, archaeologists, who understood that there was a need for a presence in Amman to support the archaeological teams that were coming out to the country. Well, that's still something that we do to this day, but we do a lot more. We're a very different organization from the one that was founded earlier on. As I say, we are a nonprofit academic institution, as other ORCs are. This is a picture of our building in Amman, which we're very proud of. It was built much later than 68, but has gone through a 2-year renovation just in recent years. If you've been to this building more than 2 years ago, you wouldn't recognize it today. It is bright and open, and I'll get back a little bit later to that. As I say, we serve an Arabic-speaking region, east and north of the Jordan River, as you see here. Number of different things that we do. In fact, cultural heritage is extremely important in supporting it. We are engaged in economic development, particularly promoting activities that enable tourism, because tourism is a big percent of the Jordanian economic situation. And when tourists don't come, it's very much noticed. And so some of the things I'm going to mention later will be illustrative of things we did that enhance Jordan as a touristic site, tourism destination. We do a lot of training and education, and I'll come up with some other examples about later. But women is an important focus, so that when we are doing field studies and we're engaging in other things, we are very conscious of including women. And I just would mention that in Petra, where we were doing some work, some of our field teams were working, they actually organized a women's group in the local community, taught them how to sift for pottery, and they continue to work after the team has long since gone. So this is just one example of how we have actually had some specific impact. Youth development in Jordan, anyone who knows Jordan knows, there's a huge youth population unemployed, and so we try to focus some of our programs there. Excuse me. As I say, our mission is to advance knowledge of Jordan and the interconnected region, past and present. We have, I'm going to think to the next slide. You can see that in Jordan itself, we have projects that we've been engaged in all over the country, from Aqaba in the south to Qais up in the north, one of the Decapolis cities, as is Jamal and Beit Ras. You know, I have to just say this, that when I was, of course, posted as a Foreign Service officer in Jordan, I was focused obviously on political military affairs much of my time. I was excited after my retirement when I was asked to join the ACORC Board of Trustees, where I didn't have to think about the politics and the military side, but just the education and cultural. I confess, my mother was a history geography teacher, and from a little kid, I only wanted to go to the Middle East. But it was to see the pyramids and to the ruins and Crusader castles. I never thought of the Arab-Israeli dispute. I might have changed my major if I had thought about it at the time. But that just tells you that my passion for history and archaeology is something that I just relish and enjoy being a part of. I would just mention that our center, as I mentioned earlier, is really a great place. We have lunches in the main hall where both our field people and our staff meet and have some time together. We have a very, very good library, which I will show you a picture of in a minute. 45,000 volumes. It's open 7 days a week. And what is really fortunate for us is that we are located just across the valley from Jordan University. So many students from the university come over and use our facility, our library. We also have a really good connection globally. And it's air conditioned in the summer, so that it's a site that invites students to come over. And that's important because our staff engages with them and has led some of them actually to join some of our field operations. So we do have rooms, places to stay. I think it's 45 rooms that are there for people. It's not just for the field teams, though they use it, but any of you who come through Amman and would like to stay at a place that's not as expensive as the local hotels, but clean, nice, and does provide breakfast and lunch as part of the fee for staying there, you're most welcome. So a couple of pictures here. In the upper left is a picture of our library. You see it's very spacious. And again, with the 45,000 volumes, very, very inviting, really, for people to come. In addition to that, you can see a picture of the meal area in the main public area on the ground floor. And I told you it was it's bright and airy now, where it used to be kind of dark. And we have a gym. And as my executive director said, yes, we even have a dog walk park. So all are welcome at our place. Let me mention just a little bit about the projects. Not pictured here, of course, is one of the most famous projects that ACOR was involved in, which is the great church in Petra with its mosaic floors. But what was so exciting about the work there was that as they were closing one summer field, one of the workers, a Jordanian actually, came out from a room on the outside to say, I think there's something back there because there's a hole and I dropped something in. And well, it went down and they discovered there the famous papyrus that what's so important and interesting about this, sorry, I'm going on because I told you I love these sorts of things, was that when the church caught fire and the roof collapsed, the heat from the fire caramelized the scrolls. So they were, as you can imagine, completely hard. They have since been unrolled and translated, and there are volumes now, I think 5 of them, which is accessible to anyone actually on our website. And the interesting thing about it was that prior to the discovery of these scrolls, the view of historians was that the 5th century in Petra was one of great decline and probably lots of raiding from local tribes. And yet what's documented in these scrolls was that they implemented the Byzantine Empire's new tax codes, which could not have been done if there hadn't been vibrant life. And in fact, a lot of the scrolls were owners of property describing their property, and there were wills, right? So it's a fascinating time. This is something exciting. But here in the picture, on the left, you see, and if you're ever in Amman and you go up to the Citadel, you see this. Well, we helped restore this temple and put those 3 columns back. I'm particularly proud of the picture on the right, the Aqaba Church. Let me give you just a little bit of background before I go into this church issue. One of the really good things that has happened in Amman, Jordan, is the very close relationship that ACOR has with the government of Jordan. You might think, well, isn't that natural? Don't you have to have that? Yes. But at a time when politics had the population thinking a lot about America that wasn't positive, it was interesting that the Ministry of Tourism and Archaeology came to ACOR and said, we have about $100 million for 3 projects, and we don't have the capability to either implement it or to do it, implement it. Would you be willing to do it? Well, this was the first time government ever came to us with money and projects, and there were 3 of them. One was the Aqaba Church, and I have some copies of our report. And in it, if you want to come and get it, you will see pictures of the other 2 of the 3 projects. One was the gate in CAORC Castle, and the third was the amphitheater up in which was Tripolitania in the Decapolis. And we did major restoration on the amphitheater. We rebuilt the gate in the CAORC Castle. It's stunning. But this one is particularly interesting. One of our trustees, Tom Parker, did excavating in this church. It is an incredible church going back to, we think, around 290. Of course, after Christ. And it's unique in that we think it's the oldest extant church in the world. And it was used and built at a time, of course, when Christianity and the empire was not tolerated, it was like persecuted. But we think that because it was so far away from the central authority, that the Christians were willing to build something and worship in it, while everyone else was still in caves and underground, right? So he excavated it, and the government paid for us as one of the projects to build this beautiful covering and lighting and a walk around for people to be able to see it. And again, going back to my comment about tourism, every one of these projects, including, of course, Petra, are sites that invite people to come to Jordan. And we've been a part of it, and it's been exciting. So I could go on that, but you can see I get carried away. But a big part of our activity, I mentioned, is a lot more than just the field and archaeology. It is in fellowships and scholarships. And there's a whole list here of different fellowships. In fact, 2 years ago, we granted the 1,000th scholarship. So we're big time in this field. And I don't think you can read all of this little fine print, but what this says here is that is an excavation of a Neolithic site in Wadi Fidan. And this is with a woman who was a CAORC person. So you can see that we do benefit from the relationship and the support that we get from CAORC. And then and this is a group of them from the CAORC grant working in the field. So, again, something that we're just very, 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 very proud of. Another one is our digital archive. This is really a unique thing, I believe. We have, it's on my notes, but I can't see my notes. And I didn't open my computer, but thousands and thousands of pictures. We've gotten them from other ORCs who've sent them just to have them on. So it goes all over the region. In fact, if I show you this next slide, you'll see all the blue dots represent places from which pictures have been sent to us and are now available. If you go on our website to the digital connection, you can place the city or the site and get the pictures. It's something that we do that's for everybody worldwide. It's just an extension of our programs, and we're very, very proud of it. I'm going to just mention as I close one other really interesting project that we are doing, which any of you who are involved in archaeology will appreciate. It's the National Cultural Heritage Property Database. Now, what does that mean? We have put over 24,000 artifacts into this database, and we are continuing to work on it. We lost the grant from the U.S. government when many of us lost grants. We continue to fund it ourselves because we thought it was important. And the importance is that if a customs or immigration officer at the airport detects an artifact, he can show that artifact against the database. And if it appears, they know exactly where it came from, which museum, which site, whatever, and they can seize it. And it's available globally. So this is something that we've argued with the State Department, and I think I shouldn't say this, right? You can't anticipate government anymore. But we point out that this is a source of revenue for terrorist groups, which is trafficking in artifacts. And therefore, you could consider this grant an anti-terrorism grant, which fits some of the thinking of the current administration. So we just we have again. I'm just so excited about what ACOR is able to do. I would just mention this: our board is 1/3 academicians, 1/3 people like me who don't do field work, and 1/3 Jordanian, including a couple of former ministers. In fact, the chair of our Jordan committee is a former foreign minister of Jordan. So we are integrated really in the town and in the culture. And I know that we are appreciated. Otherwise, the government wouldn't have come to us with $100 million to work on 3 projects. But we traditionally had a very large AID grant, which was we finished it just before the trouble started. And of course, AID is not there, and so it's not a source of revenue for us anymore. But we've been fortunate in the support that we've gotten from a lot of private donors and from ongoing field studies. And I would just again end where I started. The impact and the benefit that these ORCs bring to the relationship in the countries in which they work is simply hard to even explain. It's so real and it's so good. We're not a government agency, as Heidi said. I think that's really important just to note. But what we do really promotes the interests of the United States. And I know my embassy, our embassy, it's not mine anymore, our embassy in Amman looks to us to do things that advance what they want to see. And so we are very fortunate. I said to you that I was glad I could avoid politics. Well, the last couple of years have been really, really difficult for those of us who are close to the Israeli-Palestinian question. But even with those kinds of emotions, the support we get from the Jordanian population for what we do is untainted, is not affected at all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Skip. Okay, we do have some time for questions. Do we have some online as well? And for some in the room, let's try and do the questions and answers quickly because we don't really have a lot of time, do we? What are you going to do to us? You going to cut us off? No, we're not going to let you cut us off. Go ahead.
Is this microphone working? Yes. Okay. So I'll bundle together a couple of online questions. First, briefly, to which office in ECA will the ORCs move? And then additionally, with the transfer from education to state, how much funding came with the responsibility for management? And then lastly, I'll add, how have you all been evaluating the impact of your programs, especially in light of current situations where a variety of these different programs require an important light touch with public diplomacy, especially as they're transferring from Department of Education to Department of State?
So we're out. Technically, we're out of time. Some people will have to leave. Thank you for attending. But we're going to try and carry on if we can for a few more minutes, taking these questions from people online and in the room. But let me just say before anybody leaves, whether they're here or online, we're talking to you. American citizens and American scholars are the advanced wave of American interests around the world. And we can use this in new ways. Maybe you weren't so impressed by some of the subjects that these academics are working on. That can change. Flexibility is built into this system. But what we really need to do is find creative new ways to put tools in the hands of our public diplomacy officers overseas and partnership with American scholars who are there every year for a year and year and years, and their American associations here in the United States that meet every year and bring in graduate students every year. These are our partners to do work all around the world, and we really benefit from them. Heidi, can you try and answer some of these questions? Okay.
Okay, yeah, for the first question, which office at ECA will be handling it? That's up. We know it's under discussion right now. We haven't heard exactly how it's going to function once the Title VI funding is officially moved over. There's an interagency agreement in place, but there are a couple of lawsuits trying to block it. We don't think those will go through. So that might delay things, but we're waiting to find out more about who's actually going to handle it at ECA.
Provide the funding.
Yeah, the funding is supplied. Yes, we're just waiting for them, the office to figure out how they're going to handle it. And that's about 1.5 million that comes from the Title VI Department of Education program. So 1.5 million, and then our regular ECA funding is like 4.5 million usually. And that's, I mean, we are very inexpensive. We don't have any overhead. We don't have a NICRA that that most organizations have. Like our office space at the Smithsonian is free. Most of the centers they receive free space in country at a university or a building or something like that. So we are very, very inexpensive. We do a lot with just a small amount. I mean, do you think there's 26 centers in over 30 countries and it's, only $4.5 million. So it really does, we do spend it very carefully, and almost all of it's for programs. So, and then the advocating for ourselves, we've been working on that. The Department of Education had a very complex reporting system. We don't know how it's going to work at State Department, but we've been trying to advocate for ourselves on the Hill and places like that as well, and just try to make, just try to show the work that we do. I mean, a lot of it is these mutual understanding and people to people exchanges. It's hard to quantify, but it's just this, having these people on the ground in these countries and working closely with the local universities, and then helping any American that comes through. I mean, we don't just help our own fellows, we help all Fulbrighters, any Boren fellows, Gilman, any other American independent researchers. I mean, some of the ORCs serve as a Fulbright commission in certain countries. Some countries don't have a Fulbright commission, so the ORC performs that role. So there's a lot of different examples. I don't know if you want to talk about how you quantify, or if there's other questions we should go to.
You want to say something?
Well, the only thing I would add briefly is that the question almost made it sound like the assumption was that these are State Department programs. But I just want to, emphasize that CAORC is a private nonprofit organization. Ames is, Talim is, and that's certainly not to say that we don't want to evaluate. I listened in on the Advisory Commission for Public Diplomacy thing the other day about evaluation of research. I thought that was really interesting. We all strive. But I just wanted to clarify that anyway, there is that private nonprofit versus governmental separation there, which.
At least there was.
Well.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question, but I also have a thank you to all of you for this presentation, and also for everything that the ORCs have done over so many years to advance scholarship. I would like to invite you all. I know some of you already are members of Public Diplomacy Council of America, but given this marriage with state, we would encourage people that are passionate about the CAORCs to consider joining PDCA. And when you talk about advocating on the Hill and ways of evaluating, we're very happy to work with you to help advance that. My question is, a lot of the existing centers are in countries that do not have necessarily the greatest examples of strong embedded democracy and freedom of expression. And how have the ORCs managed to balance in countries where the sort of questions and scholarships that they dig into may be sensitive to the host governments? How have you managed to thread the needle?
It's definitely been a constant issue that we work with. I mean, we're able to work. A lot of times we'll have a scholar, a Fulbrighters and other scholars, they'll come through with a certain project and they want help with the clearance process so they can do their research, and we'll help them reword things or tell them, you can't do this or you will be in danger, or you can do it this way. So we give them advice on how to do their research and areas to stay away from. And anything that's going to put them in danger, we just tell them, you really can't do this right now. It's too dangerous. And then within the country, we're just very careful to keep that relationship very friendly. And so I guess it's very careful the way we work, and it just depends on each place. But there are a lot of places where, I mean, we don't want to waste anyone's time. If we know the ministry is not going to approve someone's research clearance, we'll tell them, like, this is not going to get approved. You're just going to waste time submitting it. So we'll help them reword things or things like that. Yeah.
Greta.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. I'm just wondering how closely do the ORCs work with the Fulbright foundations or the Fulbright commissions in country? It seems like there's some overlap in your work, but I'm just wondering if there is close coordination. Thank you.
I think I can take that one because we're out of time. Yes, they work very closely. As I was the PAO in India, the American Institute of Indian Studies worked closely with our Fulbright program there. I was the PAO in Pakistan, the American Institute of Pakistan Studies worked closely with our Fulbright program there. These are groups of American scholars that are working together. And Lord knows that when we're stuck overseas for periods of 3 years or less, the benefit to us as diplomats to have people who have spent years and years looking at these countries is enormous. And in terms of contacts, in terms of cultural understanding, in terms of languages and others. So I think we have to close now, but I do want to say thank you to my panelists for coming out today, and thank you all for your attention to this. People at ECA and state that are still watching this by video, find an opportunity here to use something that we haven't had a chance to do in the past with these American scholars, because they're the best of us. And the 250th anniversary of the United States is a great opportunity. I can see an opportunity for Talim right away involved there. And so let's see what we can make out of this, which is something great for us now. So now I'll turn it over the program.
Okay, thank you everyone who joined us today, especially you who came in person despite the very cold weather, and our online participants joining from different time zones. We hope today's forum offered valuable insights into the Council of American Overseas Research Center, ORCs, AIM Center, and CAORC, and highlighted their important roles within the public diplomacy and beyond. Thank you, Larry, for organizing today's event, and sincere thanks to all of our speakers for your thoughtful contributions. I'd also like to recognize PDCA fellow Lam Tran, our social media intern, Senior Maddox, Barbara Keller over there, who graciously welcomed our guests at the entrance during the very cold weather, members of the program and communication committee, and our photographer, Bruce Grothery. And special thanks as well to our First Monday Forum co-sponsors, USC Annenberg Center for Communication Leadership and Policy, and the GW Institute for Public Diplomacy and Global Communications. Before our next First Monday Forum, we have a special online event on February 23rd, Doing Social Media the Right Way, in the afternoon. And that same evening, from Carnegie Hall to NATO, the Life of a U.S. Arts Envoy, co-sponsored by PDCA at the International Student House. Tomorrow, PDCA is co-sponsoring a book talk with GWIPD GC, 11:30 a.m. It's called After Soft Power, Public Diplomacy, and the Reordering of World Politics. The flyers at the back if you want to take one with you. Details and RSVP information will be shared on the PDCA website and in our weekly newsletter. Our next First Monday Forum will be on Monday, March 2nd at noon, featuring Minister Masasuko Odaira of the Public Affairs Section and Director of the Japan Information and Culture Center, Embassy of Japan, who will speak on the topic Japan's gift of 250 cherry trees to celebrate America's 250th birthday, grassroots exchanges and public diplomacy. Let's hope we have cherry blossoms instead of the snow next month. And until then, please stay safe and warm. And thank you again for being with us today.